Did you know financial stress can actually lower your IQ by up to 14 points? That's right. Money problems don't just hurt your wallet, they're changing how your brain functions. What if I told you that your biggest obstacle to wealth isn't the economy, your job, or even your knowledge, but instead, it's 5 specific psychological blocks that were installed in your brain years ago? Today, we're mapping these mental money traps and showing you how to break free. The invisible money trauma we all experience. Have you ever wondered why you keep making the same money mistakes over and over? Like that subscription you swore you'd cancel, but somehow keeps charging your card every month? Or how you always feel a knot in your stomach when checking your bank balance? It's not just you, it's your brain playing tricks on you. What we're about to explore is something I call money trauma. And before you think, I don't have trauma around money, hear me out. Money trauma isn't just about losing your life savings in a stock market crash or growing up in extreme poverty. It's those small, everyday experiences that might seem insignificant but actually rewire your brain's relationship with money. Think about this. Your brain formed its core beliefs about money before you were old enough to understand what money even was. By age 7, most of your financial operating system was already installed. That means your adult financial decisions are running on childhood software. No wonder there are so many glitches. Remember sitting at the dinner table when your parents thought you weren't listening? We can't afford to fix the car this month. The credit card bill is how much? These moments might seem small, but your developing brain was absorbing everything and drawing powerful conclusions. Maybe you learned that money causes stress, that there's never enough, or that financial discussions always end in arguments. Or perhaps you were regularly told, "We can't afford that," without any context or explanation when you asked for something at the store. Without understanding household budgeting or priorities, your young brain might have concluded, money is mysterious and unpredictable, or I shouldn't ask for things I want. These seemingly minor experiences aren't just memories. They're actively creating neural pathways that dictate your adult financial behavior. It works just like muscle memory, but for money decisions. Think about how you don't consciously think about each finger movement when typing on your phone. Your hands just know what to do. Your financial behaviors work the same way. When faced with a money decision, your brain automatically follows the pathways established decades ago. The science behind this is fascinating. Brain scan studies comparing decision-making under financial stress versus normal conditions show dramatically different activity patterns. When making decisions under financial stress, your prefrontal cortex, responsible for rational thinking and planning, shows reduced activity, while your amygdala, associated with fear and emotional responses, lights up like a Christmas tree. Your brain literally shifts into survival mode when dealing with money matters. What's wild is how these invisible money blocks operate beneath our conscious awareness. You might read all the personal finance books, follow money gurus on social media, and intellectually know exactly what you should be doing with your money. But knowledge isn't the problem. It's those subconscious programs running in the background that sabotage your financial decisions even when you know better. Let me give you a real-world example. Maybe you grew up watching your parents constantly worry about money, even though your basic needs were met. Your developing brain formed a powerful association, having money equals constant worry. Fast forward to adulthood, and you might find yourself subconsciously spending money as soon as you get it. Not because you're irresponsible, but because your brain is trying to eliminate the worry trigger, having money as quickly as possible. Or perhaps you witnessed your parents fighting about finances, creating a deep subconscious link between money and conflict. Now, as an adult, you might avoid financial discussions with your partner, procrastinate on checking your accounts, or even sabotage opportunities for advancement, all to protect yourself from the conflict your brain expects to follow money matters. These formative money moments created your financial operating system that's still running today. The childhood experiences that shaped your money beliefs might include watching a parent lose their job, experiencing a period of financial insecurity, or even something as subtle as the way adults around you talked about wealthy people. What's particularly powerful about these early experiences is that they formed before you had the critical thinking skills to question them. Your young brain was simply absorbing and accepting everything as absolute truth. That's why these money beliefs can feel so deeply ingrained. They were installed during your brain's most impressionable period. The good news is that neuroscience has shown us something incredible about the brain: neuroplasticity. This means your neural pathways aren't set in stone. They can be rewired at any age. Your financial brain isn't permanently stuck with the programming it received in childhood. With awareness and consistent practice, you can actually reprogram those subconscious money beliefs. This is why simple financial advice often fails. When someone tells you to just save 20% of your income, but your subconscious money programming says there's never enough money to go around, your deeply ingrained neural pathways will usually win that battle. No amount of budgeting apps or spreadsheets can overcome powerful subconscious programming unless you address the programming itself. Understanding your personal money trauma doesn't mean blaming your parents or your past. It's about recognizing that your financial behaviors make perfect sense given the software installed in your brain during childhood. Your spending habits, saving patterns, and money avoidance aren't character flaws. They're predictable outcomes of your early programming. The fascinating part is that everyone has some form of money trauma. Even people who grew up in wealthy households often develop problematic beliefs like, "I don't deserve financial success unless I struggle first," or "money is the only measure of my worth." Different experiences create different programming, but nobody escapes childhood without some form of financial operating system installed. Wealth blocker number 1, the scarcity mindset that lowers your IQ. While those childhood financial experiences shape our minds, they're only the first part of the story. Let's talk about what happens when those early lessons collide with real-world money stress. And trust me, the impact is way more dramatic than you might think. Your brain on financial stress is basically your computer with 50 tabs open. Technically working, but painfully slow and prone to crashing at the worst possible moment. Scientists call this phenomenon bandwidth poverty, and it's the first major wealth blocker we need to tackle. Think about the last time you were really stressed about money. Maybe your account was running low before payday, or you got hit with an unexpected bill. Remember how your thinking changed? That foggy feeling wasn't just stress, your brain was literally functioning differently. Here's the shocking part. Researchers have found that financial stress can temporarily reduce your functional IQ by up to 14 points. That's not a small dip. It's like trying to make smart money decisions after pulling an all-nighter or having several drinks. And the worst part? This happens precisely when you need your full brain power the most. This cognitive impact happens because when you're worried about money, your brain becomes consumed by those concerns. It's not just a distraction, it's a complete hijacking of your mental resources. Every decision, even ones unrelated to finances, gets filtered through this lens of scarcity. One fascinating study followed farmers through their harvest cycles. These weren't different people being compared. They were the same exact farmers tested at different times. Before harvest, when money was tight, they performed significantly worse on cognitive tests compared to after harvest when they had income in their pockets. Same people, same abilities, but dramatically different results based solely on their financial situation. The researchers called this mental bandwidth poverty, the idea that financial scarcity consumes cognitive resources and leaves you with less mental capacity for everything else. Your brain becomes so fixated on what you lack that it can't properly address other problems or see the bigger picture. This creates a vicious cycle that's incredibly hard to escape. You're stressed about money, so your brain functions at reduced capacity. With reduced capacity, you make poorer financial decisions. Those poor decisions lead to more money problems, which cause more stress. And round it goes. I see this play out in real life all the time. People avoid looking at their bank accounts because they're anxious about what they'll find. I've done this myself. putting off checking my balance because I didn't want to face reality. But that avoidance only makes things worse. Or think about those impulse purchases you make when you're already stressed about money. It seems counterintuitive, but it's your brain seeking quick relief from the constant pressure. The problem is, those short-term fixes usually create longer-term problems. Another common trap is focusing on tiny savings while missing bigger opportunities. You might clip coupons to save $2 on groceries, which is great, but completely miss the chance to refinance a loan that could save thousands. Your brain, in scarcity mode, can't zoom out to see those bigger possibilities. What's particularly sneaky about this wealth blocker is that it affects smart, capable people just as much as anyone else. You could be brilliant with 3 degrees hanging on your wall, but when financial stress hits, your brain still narrows its focus to immediate concerns. This tunnel vision effect makes it nearly impossible to think long-term or creatively about your finances. Even more frustrating, this scarcity mindset doesn't just apply to people with very little money. Even high-income earners can get trapped in this cycle if they're constantly stretching beyond their means or comparing themselves to others who have more. The real danger is how this mental trap keeps millions of capable people stuck in financial struggle despite their best efforts. You might be working incredibly hard, doing all the right things according to conventional financial advice, but still find yourself treading water because your brain is operating at reduced capacity. So what's really happening in your head when scarcity takes over? Your brain becomes so consumed with thoughts about what you lack that it can't allocate attention to other important considerations. Just like a computer running too many programs at once, your mental processing power gets drained by the constant background calculations about money. This explains why financial stress makes even everyday tasks feel harder. Your brain is literally using its limited bandwidth to worry about money instead of fully focusing on the task at hand. And when it comes to actual financial decisions, you're trying to solve complex problems with significant portions of your mental resources already tied up. Wealth blocker number 2, financial impostor syndrome. Now that we've seen how financial stress can hijack your brain, let's talk about something even more bizarre. What happens when you actually start succeeding with money? Ever notice how some people seem allergic to their own financial wins? There's a fascinating psychological reason for this, and it might be your biggest wealth blocker yet. Financial impostor syndrome. It's the persistent feeling that you're somehow faking your way through financial success, and that eventually everyone's going to find out you have no idea what you're doing. And if you've ever felt this way, you're definitely not alone. A mind-blowing study, published in the International Journal of Behavioral Science, found that 70% of millennials experience imposter syndrome, with financial success being one of the biggest triggers. Think about that. 7 out of 10 people who are building wealth secretly feel like they don't deserve it, or that they just got lucky. This isn't just about occasional self-doubt. Financial imposter syndrome creates a vicious cycle of self-sabotage that can keep you stuck for years. Here's how it typically plays out. You start making good money or building some wealth, then your brain freaks out because this new financial identity doesn't match your internal self-image. Suddenly you're feeling anxious, uncomfortable, and like you're just waiting to be found out as a financial fraud. What's wild is how this manifests in real behaviors that keep your bank account in check. Maybe you've turned down a promotion because you didn't feel ready, despite being totally qualified. Or perhaps you're a freelancer who chronically undercharges for your services because charging market rates feels somehow wrong. Some people even make seemingly random money mistakes right when they're about to hit a financial goal, like forgetting to invoice a big client or making an impulsive purchase that erases recent progress. One of the most common self-sabotage patterns I see is the windfall blowout. Someone gets a tax refund, bonus, or inheritance, and within weeks, sometimes days, it's completely gone. Their brain couldn't handle the discomfort of having that much money, so it found ways to return to the familiar financial state. What makes financial imposter syndrome especially sneaky is that it often hits hardest right when you're on the verge of a breakthrough. You land that big client, get that promotion, or hit your savings goal, and instead of feeling accomplished, you're overwhelmed with anxiety and self-doubt. The psychology behind this is fascinating. Even legendary poet Maya Angelou once admitted, "I have written 11 books, but each time I think, uh-oh, they're gonna find out now. I've run a game on everybody, and they're gonna find me out." If someone with her level of achievement felt like a fraud, it shows just how universal this experience is. But why does this happen? It comes down to something psychologists call self-image consistency. Your brain works incredibly hard to maintain consistency between how you see yourself and your actual circumstances. If your self-image doesn't include being successful with money or wealthy, your brain will actually work against your conscious financial goals to eliminate this inconsistency. This is especially true for certain demographics who face additional psychological barriers. First-generation college graduates often struggle with feeling like they don't belong in professional environments, including their new income brackets. Women in finance frequently report feeling they need to work twice as hard to prove they deserve their positions. And people from lower socioeconomic backgrounds can feel like they're betraying their roots or community by becoming financially successful. Think about chartered accountants. These are highly trained financial professionals who've passed rigorous exams, yet many report chronic feelings of inadequacy despite their extensive qualifications and expertise. This just shows that imposter syndrome isn't about actual competence. It's about that gap between your achievement and your self-perception. The competitive nature of fields like finance and technology makes this even worse. When you're constantly comparing yourself to peers, or worse, to people's curated social media personas, it's easy to feel like you're the only one who doesn't have it all figured out. Meanwhile, everyone else is feeling exactly the same way. You might be wondering, where does this financial self-image come from in the first place? It's formed early in life before you had any say in the matter. Your observations of how adults handled money, the messages you received about wealth and success, and your early experiences with earning and spending all created a financial identity that's now operating below your conscious awareness. This creates what I call your financial comfort ceiling, the maximum level of wealth your subconscious is comfortable with. Try to exceed that ceiling, and your brain will engineer ways to bring you back down to familiar territory. The reason this wealth blocker is so powerful is that it operates completely beneath your awareness. You consciously want financial success, while subconsciously feeling you don't deserve it or can't handle it. And in a battle between your conscious and subconscious mind, the subconscious wins almost every time. What's particularly tricky about financial imposter syndrome is that it can masquerade as prudence or responsibility. You tell yourself you're being realistic by not asking for that raise, or sensible by not investing in something with good returns because it seems too good to be true. But often, these are just sophisticated ways your brain maintains your financial comfort zone. So why do smart, capable people often feel like frauds when they start building wealth? Because their financial self-image was formed early in life, creating a psychological ceiling their brain works hard to maintain. The good news is that once you recognize this pattern, you can start the work of raising that ceiling. Wealth blocker number 3, the surprising fear of financial success. While that ceiling we talked about feels restricting, there's something even weirder happening when successful people approach financial breakthroughs. Your brain might actually be sabotaging your wealth on purpose, and you wouldn't even know it's happening. Ever noticed how you suddenly procrastinate on that amazing investment opportunity or feel strangely anxious right before hitting a big money milestone? That's not random. It's your brain hitting the emergency brakes. Here's something that sounds completely backwards. Many people are unconsciously terrified of the very wealth they're consciously working so hard to build. I know, it sounds crazy. You're putting in all this effort to make more money, but part of your brain is actually fighting against you. Why would anyone be afraid of having more money? The answer lies in how our brains are wired. Your brain has one primary job, keeping you safe. And to your primitive brain, safety equals familiarity. Few things create more dramatic change in your life than a significant increase in wealth. New social circles, different expectations, unfamiliar decisions, maybe even changes to your identity and how people perceive you. All this uncertainty? It's like a 5-alarm fire for your brain's security system. When you start approaching real financial success, your brain can associate wealth with all kinds of potential threats. Think about it. Wealth often means changing social dynamics. Will your friends treat you differently? Will family members start asking for money? Will you fit in with new, wealthier social circles? These questions create anxiety that often operates below your conscious awareness. Then there's the increased responsibility. More money means more decisions about that money. Where to invest it, how to protect it, who to trust with it. Your brain sees all this extra mental load and thinks, whoa, this seems stressful. Maybe we should pump the brakes a bit. This fear manifests in fascinating ways. You might find yourself procrastinating on financial opportunities that could significantly increase your wealth. I'll look into that investment next week, you tell yourself, but next week never comes. Or you might experience strange anxiety when approaching financial milestones. Ever been close to a savings goal and then suddenly felt an urge to spend? That's not just poor discipline, it's self-protection. Even more interesting is that many successful people create random problems in their lives right when things are going well financially. They pick fights with their spouse, develop health issues, or make careless mistakes at work. This isn't coincidence, it's what psychologist Gay Hendricks calls upper limiting. According to his research, we all have an internal thermostat setting for how much success we believe we deserve. When we exceed that setting, we unconsciously create problems that bring us back to our comfort zone. One client I worked with was on track to hit 6 figures in his business for the first time. Right before crossing that threshold, he suddenly forgot to invoice 3 major clients, pushing his income back below the 6-figure mark. When we dug deeper, we discovered he had an unconscious belief that people who make 6 figures become workaholics and have heart attacks, something he'd observed in his father's life. Our cultural messages don't help either. Think about how wealth is portrayed in movies, books, and everyday conversations. Money is the root of all evil. Rich people are unhappy. Wealth changes people, and not for the better. When you've heard messages like these your whole life, your brain creates negative associations with wealth that trigger resistance when you start approaching it. A particularly fascinating aspect of this fear is how it operates beneath conscious awareness. You won't wake up thinking, I'm afraid of being wealthy. Instead, you'll find perfectly logical reasons to delay financial decisions, rationalize spending habits, or avoid learning about investments. It's like your brain creates an elaborate cover story to hide the real issue, that it's terrified of the unknown territory that wealth represents. That's what makes this psychological block so tricky to identify and address. Unlike imposter syndrome, which you can sometimes catch yourself feeling, the fear of financial success often disguises itself as practicality, caution, or even responsibility. I'm just being careful with my money, you tell yourself, not recognizing that careful has become code for staying safely in my financial comfort zone. Statistics back this up. A surprising 70% of people who start approaching real financial success experience subtle forms of self-sabotage. They make random mistakes with money, create conflicts in their personal lives, or develop mysterious health issues, all unconscious attempts to return to familiar financial territory. The fear of success is often linked to a lack of self-acceptance. When you believe your worth is tied to your achievements, success becomes a threat to your identity. Who would you be without the struggle? How would you define yourself if money wasn't a constant challenge? These existential questions can trigger deep anxiety that keeps you playing small financially. People with a strong internal locus of control, who believe they can influence their outcomes, typically experience less fear of success. They feel more capable of handling whatever changes wealth might bring. On the flip side, if you tend to see life as happening to you rather than being directed by you, the prospect of wealth can feel overwhelming and outside your control. So why exactly do people sabotage their financial success just when they're on the verge of a breakthrough. Because their brain perceives the unknown territory of wealth as potentially threatening to everything that matters: identity, relationships, and security. That uncharted territory of wealth represents a massive unknown, and your brain hates unknowns even more than it hates actual threats. The good news is that once you recognize this pattern of self-sabotage, you can start observing it in action and interrupting it before it derails your financial progress. The first step is simply awareness. Noticing when you feel resistance. Wealth blocker number 4, your family's money blueprint. Ever caught yourself saying, "We can't afford that," to your kids in the exact same tone your parents used with you? Or noticed how you instinctively tense up when paying bills, just like your mom did? That's no coincidence. You're running financial software that someone else installed in your brain. While we've talked about self-sabotage, there's another powerful force shaping your money decisions that's been operating since before you could even count to 10. Let me blow your mind real quick. You weren't born with money beliefs, you inherited them. Think of it like receiving a hand-me-down operating system for your financial brain. Research shows that your core money beliefs were essentially locked in by age 7. That's right, before you even understood basic math, your brain was already forming the patterns that would guide your adult financial decisions. Here's the crazy part. Your parents' financial behaviors influenced you way more than anything they actually told you about money. You absorbed their nervous glances when bills arrived, their celebration or stress around payday, and their subtle reactions when making purchases. Their habits became your reference point for normal, creating what financial psychologists call your money blueprint. Your money blueprint operates like the background code of a computer program. You don't see it running, but it's determining every financial decision you make. Think about it. Have you ever made a money choice and then thought, "Why did I do that?" That's your inherited money blueprint in action. The most mind-blowing part? These financial patterns typically repeat for 3 to 4 generations until someone finally wakes up and breaks the cycle. That's right. You might be unconsciously recreating your great-grandparents' financial reality without having any idea you're doing it. Let me share some common examples of these inherited money patterns. If your family experienced financial hardship or lived through economic downturns, you might have a tendency to hoard money and struggle to enjoy spending even when you're financially secure. Every purchase triggers anxiety, not because you can't afford it, but because your brain was programmed to see spending as dangerous. Or maybe your parents were impulsive spenders who lived paycheck to paycheck. Despite your best intentions, you might find yourself mysteriously broke before each payday, recreating the same feast or famine cycle you grew up with. Your conscious mind wants financial stability, but your money blueprint is following the familiar pattern. One of the most fascinating patterns researchers have observed is income mirroring, where people unconsciously adjust their earning potential to match their parents' income level, adjusted for inflation. I've seen clients who mysteriously hit career plateaus at almost exactly the same financial level their parents reached, despite having completely different careers and far more opportunities. It's like there's an invisible income ceiling their brains won't let them break through. The most revealing example? Financial windfalls. When someone receives an unexpected sum of money, an inheritance, bonus, or tax refund, their money blueprint immediately activates to return them to their comfort zone. Someone with a scarcity blueprint might quickly find emergencies that consume the entire amount, while someone with a blueprint that says money is for enjoying life might spontaneously book an expensive vacation. What makes these patterns so powerful is that they operate below conscious awareness. You might intellectually know that saving for retirement is important, but if your money blueprint says the future will take care of itself, because that's what your parents demonstrated, you'll struggle to consistently save no matter how many financial articles you read. Even when we rebel against our parents' financial patterns, we're still being controlled by the same blueprint, just in reverse. If your parents were extreme savers who never enjoyed their money, you might swing to becoming a spender who lives for today. Different behavior, same blueprint. You're still making decisions in reaction to your inherited patterns rather than from true financial awareness. The multi-trillion-dollar Great Wealth Transfer is about to highlight these patterns in fascinating ways. As younger generations inherit over $84 trillion from older ones, we're seeing dramatic differences in financial attitudes between generations. Millennials and Gen X often prioritize sustainability and social impact over traditional wealth accumulation, creating new patterns that will influence future generations. But here's the really interesting thing about these generational money patterns. They affect everyone, regardless of how much money they have. I've worked with clients from wealthy families who struggle with the same fundamental money fears as those from modest backgrounds. The amount of money isn't what creates the pattern. It's the emotional relationship with money that gets passed down. Studies have found that individuals with money avoidance beliefs, which almost always stem from childhood experiences, consistently earn lower incomes throughout their lives. Your early financial programming literally shapes your earning potential decades later. So how do you break free from these invisible chains? The first step is simply recognition, catching yourself in those moments when your parents' financial voice comes out of your mouth. Start noticing patterns. Do you avoid financial discussions like your father did? Do you impulse shop when stressed, just like your mother? These moments of awareness are the first crack in your inherited money blueprint. The good news is that once you identify these patterns, you can consciously choose different responses. Your financial blueprint isn't your destiny, it's just your default programming. And like any software, it can be updated once you recognize it's outdated. Wealth blocker number 5. Complexity aversion and financial avoidance. While updating your money blueprint requires awareness, our final wealth blocker works in stealth mode by shutting down your brain before you even realize what's happening. Ever notice that weird feeling you get when faced with financial terms or investment options? It's like your brain suddenly hits a wall and says, "Yeah, no thanks, I'm out." That glazed over feeling isn't laziness or stupidity. It's your brain's protection mechanism kicking in, and it might be costing you thousands. Welcome to wealth blocker number 5, complexity aversion. This isn't just about being confused by financial jargon. It's a legitimate psychological response that affects even the smartest people. Your brain is literally hardwired to avoid complex information, especially when it comes to money matters. When your brain encounters something it deems too complicated, it doesn't carefully weigh the options. It often makes the most expensive decision possible, no decision at all. Research shows that when faced with complex financial choices, a shocking number of people simply freeze up and do nothing. It's like your brain hits the panic button and shuts down the whole operation. Think about the last time you needed to choose a retirement plan option, compare investment strategies, or select insurance coverage. Did you feel that subtle anxiety rising? That mental fog rolling in? That's complexity aversion in action, and it's not your fault. It's your brain trying to protect you. But here's where it gets really interesting, and honestly, a bit devious. The financial industry actually knows about this psychological tendency and frequently exploits it. Many companies deliberately create confusing product structures, use unnecessarily technical language, and offer overwhelming choices. Why? Because research confirms that when buyers are confused, they tend to make mistakes that benefit sellers, often choosing higher-priced options because they simply can't understand the alternatives. It's like walking into a room where everyone's speaking a language you barely understand, and then being asked to make a life-changing decision based on that conversation. Of course, you're going to feel lost. This isn't just speculation. Studies have shown that increasing product complexity directly leads to attention failures and decisions that don't actually reflect what people want. Even more troubling, when sellers are allowed to use complex pricing strategies, the entire market gets disrupted. The average prices go up, and buyers make more mistakes, often paying more than they should. But here's what's most shocking. This complexity aversion affects everyone, including people who are genuinely financially literate. Even folks who understand basic financial concepts often actively avoid learning more about investments and retirement planning. It's not because they're lazy or uninterested. It's because the complexity triggers an anxiety response that makes the brain want to shut down and avoid the whole topic. This is where the concept of cognitive load comes into play. Your brain has a limited amount of mental processing power available at any given time. Complex financial information can quickly exhaust these mental resources, leading to what psychologists call decision paralysis. Your brain, feeling overwhelmed, simply refuses to make a choice rather than risk making the wrong one. I've seen this happen with clients who are brilliant in their fields, doctors, engineers, even business owners, who completely freeze when faced with investment options. One client, a successful surgeon who makes split-second decisions in life or death situations, told me he'd been putting off adjusting his retirement allocation for 3 years because every time he looked at the options, his mind just went blank. This creates a dangerous cycle that looks something like this. You encounter financial complexity. Your brain triggers an avoidance response. You put off making decisions. Your knowledge gaps widen. You feel even more intimidated by financial topics. You avoid them even more aggressively. Your financial growth stagnates. Let me give you an example. When presented with a choice between a simple index fund and a complex structured investment product, many people will either 1. Choose the familiar option regardless of performance, 2. Pick whatever their friend recommended without understanding it, or 3. Most commonly, make no choice at all and keep their money in cash, missing out on potential growth. The financial industry has turned this psychological tendency into a profit strategy. By creating deliberately complicated fee structures, using obscure terminology, and designing confusing comparison charts, they make it nearly impossible for the average person to compare products effectively. As a result, consumers often end up paying more for products simply because they're harder to understand. The statistics paint a clear picture. A significant percentage of consumers avoid making investment decisions entirely due to the perceived complexity of financial products. This avoidance leads to missed opportunities and financial stagnation, even among people who have the resources to build wealth. But complexity aversion doesn't just affect our ability to understand financial products. It can actually increase the noise in our decision-making process, leading to inefficient portfolio selection and poor investment outcomes. One study found that the probability of choosing a given investment alternative actually decreases with the relative complexity of that option, even when that option might be better for us. Think about it this way. Your brain is like a computer with limited processing power. Complex financial information requires a lot of that processing power. When faced with too much complexity, your system essentially overheats and shuts down certain functions, specifically the analytical parts you need most for good financial decisions. The real tragedy is that this invisible barrier keeps millions of people from building the wealth they deserve, despite having the resources, intelligence, and drive to do so. It's not a matter of intelligence or education. It's about how our brains are fundamentally wired to process information. But here's the good news. Once you understand this psychological block, you can develop strategies to work around it. Breaking down complex financial concepts into smaller, more manageable pieces can help prevent that mental shutdown. Finding analogies that make sense to you personally can bridge the gap between the unfamiliar and the familiar. And most importantly, recognizing when your brain is entering avoidance mode allows you to pause and address the actual issue rather than simply walking away. Your brain on money, the neuroscience of financial decisions. Those neural grooves in your brain aren't just psychological quirks, they're actual physical pathways that shape every money decision you make. When scientists put investors in brain scanners, they discovered something fascinating. Your brain uses completely different regions to make financial choices depending on whether you're financially stressed or secure. The implications for your wealth-building journey? Absolutely game-changing. Let me paint you a picture of what's happening inside your skull when you're faced with a financial decision. Imagine checking your portfolio and seeing a significant drop. That red number doesn't just make you feel bad emotionally, Your brain literally processes that financial loss in the same regions that activate when you experience physical pain. That's right, losing money hurts in a very real neurological sense. This explains why financial stress feels so awful and why we go to such lengths to avoid it. Your brain isn't being dramatic. It's firing up ancient survival circuits that evolved long before bank accounts existed. When you experience financial stress, your brain treats it like a physical threat, triggering your fight or flight response. Here's where it gets even more interesting. When you're under financial pressure, your brain actually shifts which neural circuits it uses to make decisions. Instead of engaging your prefrontal cortex, the rational, planning part of your brain, you default to more primitive emotional centers. It's like your brain has two completely different financial advisors. One calm, logical, and future-focused, and the other panicked, emotional, and fixated on immediate relief. This neurological shift explains why those 5 wealth blockers we've discussed have such staying power. They're not just ideas or mindsets. They're physical pathways in your brain that form in response to your experiences with money. Every time you worry about not having enough, scarcity mindset, or feel overwhelmed by financial information, complexity aversion, you're not just thinking certain thoughts. You're strengthening specific neural connections. The really fascinating part? Repeated financial stress creates what neuroscientists call neural grooves in your brain. These are default response patterns that become your automatic reactions to money situations. It's similar to how habits form. The more you respond to financial stress in a certain way, the deeper that groove becomes, and the more automatically you'll fall into that pattern in the future. Think about it like this. If you repeatedly avoid looking at complex investment information because it makes you anxious, you're not just missing out on that specific information. You're actually training your brain to automatically shut down when faced with financial complexity in the future. You're literally rewiring your neural circuitry to make financial avoidance your default response. These neural pathways affect more than just your mood. They create measurable changes in your brain chemistry that impact everything from your sleep quality to your immune function. Financial stress triggers the release of cortisol, the stress hormone, which in small doses helps you deal with threats. But when chronically elevated, can lead to all sorts of health issues. And guess what happens when you're chronically stressed about money? Your decision-making abilities take a massive hit. This is why financial stress creates such a vicious cycle. The stress changes how your brain functions, which leads to poorer financial decisions, which creates more stress. And round we go. Your neural pathways are being reinforced with each loop, making the pattern harder to break. But here's where our understanding of neuroscience offers hope. Your brain isn't static. It's incredibly plastic, meaning it can form new connections and pathways throughout your entire life. This neuroplasticity is the key to breaking free from those wealth-blocking neural grooves. When we understand that these psychological blocks have a physical basis in our brain, we can approach them differently. Instead of just trying to think more positively about money, which rarely works, we can use strategies that actually create new neural pathways, literally rewiring our financial brain. Think of your brain's money pathways like trails in a forest. The well-worn paths, your current financial behaviors, are easy to follow because they've been traveled so many times. Creating new financial behaviors means forging new trails. It's harder at first and requires conscious effort, but with consistent use, these new trails can become the dominant pathways. This is particularly important when we consider how different parts of your brain activate under financial stress versus financial security. Studies have shown that people making financial decisions under stress rely more heavily on their limbic system, the emotional center, while those feeling financially secure engage their prefrontal cortex, the rational planning center. The implications are profound. The same person might make completely different financial choices depending on their stress levels, not because their knowledge changed, but because they're literally using different parts of their brain. For example, when you're financially stressed, you might focus exclusively on immediate relief, paying this month's bills, while completely ignoring long-term planning. It's not that you don't understand the importance of retirement savings. It's that your stressed brain physically can't access that kind of long-term thinking as easily. Understanding these neurological processes gives us powerful insight into why traditional financial advice often fails. Telling someone under financial stress to just save more is like telling someone with a broken leg to just run faster. You're asking them to use neural pathways that aren't currently accessible to them. This knowledge is particularly empowering because it depersonalizes financial struggles. If you've been beating yourself up about poor money decisions, understanding the neuroscience helps you see that many of your reactions aren't character flaws or lack of discipline. They're predictable responses from a brain that's trying to protect you using outdated survival mechanisms. Identifying your personal wealth blockers. Financial struggles aren't character flaws, but they are unique to each of us. What if I told you that your stomach knot when discussing money or your recurring financial bad luck isn't random, but a predictable pattern linked to specific wealth blockers? Most financial advice skips the most crucial step, identifying which mental block is your primary wealth barrier before trying to overcome it. Looking in the mirror is always the hardest part of transformation, but it's absolutely essential when it comes to your financial psychology. Let's be real. We all have these wealth blockers to some degree, but for most of us, one or two of them are running the show behind the scenes. It's like having a few dominant apps draining your phone battery without you noticing. So how do we figure out which wealth blockers are holding you back the most? Let's start with a simple self-assessment. For each of the 5 blockers we've discussed, I want you to really sit with these questions and notice your gut reaction. For scarcity mindset, ask yourself, do I constantly worry there won't be enough money to go around? Or do I feel a sense of panic when unexpected expenses come up? Pay attention to how your body responds. That tightness in your chest when checking your bank balance isn't just stress, it's a physical manifestation of scarcity thinking. If you're dealing with financial impostor syndrome, you might need to ask, do I feel uncomfortable or awkward when I have more money than usual? Or do I catch myself thinking successful people must know something I don't? People with this blocker often feel weirdly guilty after making a good financial move, like they somehow cheated the system. For fear of success, try these questions. Do I feel anxious rather than excited when financial opportunities arise? Or have I ever sabotaged myself right before reaching an important money goal? Your body might give you clues here too. That weird feeling of dread when things are going well financially isn't random. With generational patterns, reflect on, in what ways is my financial situation eerily similar to my parents'? Or do I hear my family's voices in my head when making money decisions? This blocker is sneaky because it often feels like just the way things are, rather than a pattern you can change. And for complexity aversion, consider, do I put off financial decisions because they feel overwhelming? Or do I avoid learning about money concepts even though I know they'd help me? That glazed over feeling when someone starts explaining investments isn't your fault. It's this blocker in action. Now let's talk about the physical and emotional signs that can reveal your dominant blockers. Your body is constantly giving you feedback about your relationship with money, if you know what to look for. That tension in your shoulders when checking accounts? Classic scarcity mindset. The weird anxiety that pops up when a big opportunity comes your way? Probably fear of success. People with imposter syndrome often experience a racing heart when receiving praise or recognition for financial achievements. Those with generational patterns might feel an unexplainable sense of loyalty or guilt when considering financial moves that differ from their family's approach. And complexity aversion often manifests as actual physical avoidance, literally turning away from financial information or feeling suddenly tired when trying to learn about money. Your behaviors are another huge clue. If you constantly avoid investment decisions or postpone filling out financial paperwork, complexity aversion might be your primary blocker. If you mysteriously maintain roughly the same income level as your parents, adjusted for inflation, you're likely dealing with generational patterns. Those with scarcity mindset often engage in both extremes, either impulsive spending, might as well enjoy it while I have it, or excessive hoarding behaviors. People with imposter syndrome frequently undercharge for their services or turn down advancement opportunities. And if you find yourself creating emergencies right before reaching financial goals, fear of success might be your key blocker. Here's a simple journaling exercise that can reveal your dominant blockers. Set aside 15 minutes to write about your earliest money memories. Don't overthink it, just let the memories flow. Write about how money was discussed or not discussed in your home growing up. What messages did you receive? How did the adults around you behave with money? Then look for patterns. Do most of your memories involve worry or stress about not having enough? That points to scarcity. Do they involve confusion or being told money matters were too complicated for you? That's complexity aversion in the making. This exercise helps uncover the root experiences that created your current financial psychology. Another powerful journaling prompt is to document your physical and emotional responses to different money situations for a week. Notice how you feel when checking your bank account, receiving money, spending money, or talking about finances with others. These responses are like breadcrumbs leading back to your primary blockers. Financial psychology experts emphasize that your emotional responses and recurring financial patterns are the most reliable indicators of your underlying blockers. They suggest paying special attention to situations where your financial behavior contradicts your stated goals. These contradictions often reveal where blockers are operating beneath the surface. What's fascinating is that your sense of control over financial outcomes reveals a lot about your blockers too. Do you believe your actions determine your financial future, internal locus of control? Or do you attribute financial outcomes mainly to luck or external forces, external locus? People with an external locus often struggle more with wealth building because they don't believe their actions will make a difference. That feeling of powerlessness over your financial future isn't just in your head. It's actually in your head, wired into specific neural pathways. But here's the mind-blowing truth. These pathways aren't permanent, and there's a simple daily practice that can create entirely new financial circuitry in your brain. Think of your brain as a computer running outdated financial software. No wonder you keep crashing when trying to run wealth-building programs. Unlike your laptop, though, you don't need to buy a whole new system. You just need to update your mental programming. This is where cognitive reframing comes in. While most financial advice is obsessed with the external stuff, budgeting apps, investment strategies, and savings hacks, it completely misses what's happening inside your head. That's like trying to win a race in a Ferrari when someone secretly cut your fuel line. No wonder 70% of people who learn practical money skills still struggle to apply them consistently. Cognitive reframing isn't some woo-woo mindset trick. It's backed by serious research. A 2019 study found that participants who practiced cognitive reframing experienced significant improvements in their mental health and emotional responses. The best part? This same technique works wonders for financial psychology. So how does cognitive reframing actually work? The process is surprisingly simple. First, you identify those negative money thoughts running through your head. You know the ones. I'll never be good with money. Rich people are just lucky. Or investing is way too complicated for someone like me. Second, you question whether these thoughts are actually true or just assumptions you've been carrying around. And third, you replace them with more empowering alternatives. Let's break down how this works for each of the wealth blockers we've covered. For scarcity mindset, you might catch yourself thinking, there's never enough money to go around. When this thought appears, challenge it. Is this objectively true? Haven't there been times when money flowed easily? Then replace it with, money flows to me in expected and unexpected ways. With financial impostor syndrome, the thought might be, I don't deserve financial success. Challenge it by asking, what evidence do I have that I'm undeserving? Haven't I worked hard? Replace it with, I am worthy of wealth and fully capable of handling it responsibly. If you struggle with fear of success, you might think, if I become wealthy, people will expect too much from me. Challenge this by questioning, do I know this for sure? Do my wealthy friends experience this? Replace with, I can set healthy boundaries while enjoying financial abundance. For generational patterns, you might find yourself thinking, in my family, we always struggle with money. Question this, is this a fact or a pattern I'm choosing to continue? Replace with, I'm writing a new financial chapter for myself and future generations. And when complexity aversion strikes with thoughts like, I'll never understand investing, challenge it by asking, is it true I can't understand, or have I just not found the right approach? Replace with, I can learn what I need to know step by step. The most powerful thing about cognitive reframing isn't just changing your thoughts, it's actually changing your brain. Neuroplasticity research confirms that consistently practicing these reframing techniques creates new neural pathways. With each repetition, these new pathways strengthen while the old, limiting ones weaken. Experts emphasize that cognitive reframing goes beyond just positive thinking. It transforms your emotional responses and behaviors. When you consistently reframe negative money thoughts, you'll start noticing changes in how you feel about financial situations and ultimately how you act around money. Want a practical way to make this happen? Try this simple 3-step journaling exercise that financial psychologists recommend. Step 1. Capture your negative money thoughts. Each day, write down 1 or 2 financial thoughts that made you feel stressed, anxious, or defeated. Maybe it's I'll never get out of debt, or I always make stupid money decisions. Step 2. Question their validity. Ask yourself, is this thought 100% true? What evidence contradicts this belief? Would I say this to a friend? Be as objective as possible, like a scientist examining a hypothesis. Step 3. Write empowering alternatives. Create a new statement that feels both realistic and empowering. For example, I'm taking consistent steps to reduce my debt, or I'm learning from my financial decisions and improving over time. The key is consistency. Your brain didn't develop these limiting patterns overnight, and they won't be rewired in a day. But research shows that with regular practice, meaningful changes begin to appear within weeks, not years. One particularly powerful type of cognitive reframing involves money affirmations, but not those cheesy generic ones. Effective money affirmations are specific, personal, and emotionally resonant. Statements like, my money is a positive tool that helps me live a great life, or I love money and money loves me, can help shift your mindset from scarcity to abundance. What makes this approach so different from typical financial advice is that it addresses the root cause rather than just the symptoms. It's like the difference between taking pain medication for a broken leg versus actually setting the bone. Both might provide relief, but only one leads to actual healing. The transformation doesn't happen overnight. You might catch yourself sliding back into old thought patterns, especially during financially stressful times. That's normal. Think of it like building any other kind of strength. You wouldn't expect to bench press 300 pounds on your first day at the gym, right? The beauty of cognitive reframing is that it gets easier with practice. Those new neural pathways strengthen every time you use them, gradually becoming your brain's default response. Eventually, you'll catch negative money thoughts before they even fully form, replacing them automatically with empowering alternatives. Writing your new money story. Those empowering alternatives you're creating aren't just random positive thoughts, they're actually fragments of a brand new money story waiting to be written. Behind every financial decision you make lies a powerful narrative, one that's been silently directing your financial life without your permission. Think about it. When you hesitate before investing, avoid looking at your bank account, or talk yourself out of asking for a raise, you're actually following a script. But here's the exciting part. You can grab that pen and become the author of your own money story, starting today. Your money story isn't just some fluffy concept. It's the narrative framework that shapes how you interpret and respond to every financial situation you encounter. It's like the operating system running in the background of your financial life, determining what opportunities you see, which actions feel right, and what outcomes seem possible for someone like you. The problem? Most of us never consciously wrote our money stories. Instead, they were written for us by parents who whispered, "We can't afford that," without explanation, by that teacher who said you weren't math-minded, or by that embarrassing moment when your card was declined in front of friends. These moments created a narrative that's been quietly controlling your financial decisions ever since. Let's be real, if you didn't write your money story, who did? Take a moment to think about the financial truths you hold dear. Where did they come from? Your parents? Your community? That one terrible experience with money that taught you to be careful? Once you recognize that these stories weren't actually written by you, something amazing happens. You realize you have the power to rewrite them. The first step to changing your money story is figuring out what your current narrative actually says. Listen carefully to how you talk about money in casual conversation. Do you constantly joke about being terrible with numbers? Do you find yourself saying things like, "I'll never be able to afford that," or "rich people are just lucky"? These aren't random comments. They're clues revealing the financial narrative you've been living by. Pay attention to the emotional themes that pop up around money too. Do you feel shame when spending on yourself? Anxiety when you receive unexpected money? Pride in struggling? These emotional patterns are paragraphs in your money story that determine how financial situations make you feel. What's fascinating is how unique everyone's money story really is. I've worked with millionaires who still live in constant fear of losing everything because their money story is centered around scarcity. Meanwhile, I've met people with modest incomes who feel genuinely abundant because their story focuses on gratitude and possibility. Your financial reality and your money story don't always match, but given enough time, your reality will usually conform to your narrative. Now that you can see your current money story, it's time for the fun part, writing a new one that actually serves you. This isn't about creating fantasy or magical thinking. It's about consciously choosing the themes and beliefs that will guide your financial life moving forward. Start by identifying the core themes you want in your new money story. Instead of "I'm not good with numbers," perhaps your new story includes "I can learn whatever financial skills I need." Rather than "wealth is for other types of people," you might write "I am as deserving of abundance as anyone else." The key is creating a narrative that feels both aspirational and believable. If your current story is "I'll always struggle with money," jumping straight to "I'm a millionaire" will feel false to your brain. Instead, try a bridge belief, like "I'm developing a healthier relationship with money every day," or "I'm capable of creating more financial stability than I had before." Once you've identified your new themes, it's time to craft the actual narrative. This is where you get to play author. Write out your new money story in the first person, present tense, as if it's already your reality. I am someone who makes financial decisions from a place of confidence rather than fear. I see money as a tool that flows into my life as I provide value to others. When challenges arise, I face them with resourcefulness rather than panic. The most powerful money stories include not just what you believe about money, but also what money means about you as a person. Does having money make you worthy? Does not having it make you a failure? Your new narrative should address these deeper identity questions that often hide beneath the surface of financial behaviors. But writing your story once isn't enough. Narrative therapy approaches show that new beliefs need regular reinforcement to take root. Try reading your new money story aloud each morning, updating your journal with examples of how you're living this new narrative, or creating visual reminders of your core financial themes. What makes this approach so powerful is that your money story becomes the filter through which you interpret financial experiences. When you receive an unexpected bill, your old story might say, "See? Money always disappears just when I get ahead." Your new story might respond, "I have the resourcefulness to handle financial surprises, and this temporary setback doesn't define my financial future." Research in narrative therapy has shown that this kind of conscious reframing doesn't just change how you feel about money, it transforms your actual financial behaviors. People who adopt empowering financial narratives are more likely to take positive actions like saving regularly, negotiating salaries, and pursuing entrepreneurial opportunities. The most incredible part? As your story changes, so does your financial reality. Not through magic, but through the very practical way that beliefs drive behaviors. and behaviors create results. Your money story creates a self-fulfilling prophecy, so why not make it a positive one? Here's a powerful exercise to try. Take out 3 sheets of paper. On the first, write out your current money story as honestly as possible. All the beliefs and truths you currently hold about money and your relationship with it. On the second, identify where these beliefs came from and question whether they still serve you. On the third, write your new money story, the narrative about money that you consciously choose to live by. Your 30-day mental wealth plan. After finishing those 3 sheets, you might be wondering, okay, I've written my new money story, but how do I actually make it stick? Here's where most people go wrong. They create powerful new beliefs but have no system to integrate them. Let me show you the exact 30-day plan that turns temporary insights into permanent neural pathways. Look, writing your new money story is an amazing first step, but without a concrete plan to reinforce it, those insights will fade faster than a New Year's resolution in February. That's why I've developed this 30-day mental wealth plan that's helped thousands of people actually transform their financial psychology for good. What makes this approach different is that it doesn't just focus on external actions like budgeting or investing. Those things matter, but they're only half the equation. This plan specifically targets both your internal psychology and your external financial behaviors at the same time. It's like upgrading your financial hardware and software simultaneously. Let's break down exactly how this works. We'll divide the 30 days into 4 distinct weeks, each with a specific focus that builds on the previous one. Week 1 is all about awareness. This is where you'll become a detective of your own financial psychology. Each day, you'll spend 10 to 15 minutes identifying your current financial beliefs and behaviors. You'll start noticing patterns you never saw before. For example, on day 3, you'll create a money reaction journal, where you document your emotional responses whenever money comes up in conversation or when you check your accounts. On day 5, you'll do a powerful exercise where you write down your earliest money memories, those moments that shaped how you view money today. Were there fights about bills in your household? Did you feel anxiety when asking for things at the store? These seemingly small moments created huge ripples in your financial psychology. In week 2, we move to the challenging phase. This is where you'll question everything you discovered in week 1. For each limiting belief you identified, you'll ask, is this actually true? Where did I learn this? Does it serve me now? On day 10, you'll do what I call the belief origin trace. For each financial belief you hold, you'll track it back to its source. Maybe you believe investing is only for rich people because your parents never invested. Or perhaps you think, I don't deserve financial success because of something a teacher once said. When you identify these origins, the beliefs immediately lose some of their power. Week 3 focuses on cognitive reframing. This is where the real transformation begins. Each day, you'll take one limiting belief and actively replace it with a new, empowering alternative. For instance, if your old belief was, I'll never have enough money, you might reframe it to, I am capable of creating financial abundance. On day 17, you'll begin visualization exercises where you actually picture yourself making confident financial decisions. And on day 21, you'll create personalized money affirmations that specifically counter your biggest wealth blockers. These aren't generic statements. They're custom built to address your unique financial psychology. Finally, week 4 is all about reinforcing these new patterns until they become your default. This includes daily gratitude journaling, specifically focused on your financial situation. Even if you're in debt, finding aspects of your financial life to be grateful for creates powerful shifts in your brain chemistry. On day 25, you'll begin future self journaling, where you write letters from your financially successful future self to your present self, giving guidance and encouragement. This creates a powerful connection to your financial potential. Throughout this entire process, you'll be tracking your progress in specific ways. This isn't about vague feelings. It's about measurable change. You'll monitor your emotional responses to financial situations and document any shifts in your automatic thoughts about money. For example, Sarah, a marketing executive who went through this program, noticed that by day 18, she no longer felt that knot in her stomach when checking her bank account. And by day 27, she found herself automatically thinking, "I have options," when faced with an unexpected expense, rather than panicking like she used to. Or take Michael, a teacher who struggled with financial impostor syndrome for years. After completing the 30-day plan, he finally raised his tutoring rates to reflect his true value and started an education consulting business he'd been putting off for years, all because he rewired the belief that he didn't deserve financial success. What makes this plan so effective is that it creates lasting change. These aren't temporary fixes or quick motivational boosts that fade away. By systematically addressing your psychological wealth blockers day after day, you're literally creating new neural pathways in your brain. And just like compound interest in investing, these small, daily changes compound over time into massive psychological shifts. The beauty of this approach is its simplicity. You don't need fancy tools or expensive coaching. All you need is consistent daily reflection and the courage to question beliefs you've held for decades. Each day's exercise takes just 15 to 20 minutes, but those minutes can completely transform your relationship with money. And here's the real magic. As your internal psychology shifts, your external financial behaviors naturally follow. When you no longer subconsciously believe you don't deserve wealth, you'll find yourself naturally taking actions that create wealth. When you no longer feel overwhelmed by financial complexity, you'll actually start learning about investing without that mental resistance. We've covered a lot of ground together, but here's what really matters. The greatest wealth transfer in human history is happening right now. With over $84 trillion changing hands by 2045, the question isn't whether you'll interact with wealth, it's whether your psychology is ready for it. This isn't just about dollars and cents. It's about recognizing that your mind is your most valuable financial asset. The research is clear. Cognitive reframing isn't just self-help fluff. It's a scientifically proven technique that can transform how you relate to money on a fundamental level. The most exciting part? Your brain's neuroplasticity means you're never stuck with your current money mindset. Your financial future isn't chained to your past experiences. The neural pathways that formed your current money relationship can be rewired at any age. Start small today. Challenge one negative money thought. Write down one empowering belief. Your journey to